Hey guys, what is up? Awesome the Sauce here. Hope you guys are having a great day. And today we're going to be looking at all the new ice spells in this update. Some of these are absolutely game-changing. Some of these are broken. Without further ado, let's get right into it. Today we're going to be starting with the rank 1 through the rank 6 spells. They basically changed some of the shadow spells. They changed some of the gambits. And they also changed the rank 1 through 6 spells. Let's get right into it, man. Frost Beetle. I'm gonna be honest, I don't really know how good Frost Beetle is. It's a 1-pip spell. I'm looking at it, it almost feels like you need to P-Serve for it to be a good move. But basically what it does, right, it clears a shield on yourself, any shield that you happen to have on yourself, and then it replaces it with a -60 enemy shield. So very obviously, this is only ever going to be worth it in some very, very small situations. One situation that I think could be really, really good is if instead of Steel Warding, if you need to break an ice shield, and you have a shield on yourself that's either, I guess, helpful or unhelpful, you can basically turn it into an even better shield. I honestly think this spell could be comparable to Steel Ward in a lot of ways, and in fact, in some ways it could be better, because while you can Steel Ward and someone can Steel Ward back, getting rid of your own shield for a school-specific enemy shield, this could be really good. So this is a chromatic shield, let's not forget that. So if you use this against a death, you're gonna get a -60 death shield, for example. Really, really cool concept. I think I like this way better than whatever Evil Snowman was. If you pip conserve it, maybe even very game-changing. Something to look into if you haven't yet. Moving swiftly along, we got the new Snow Serpent. It clears an enemy trap. So that's just one trap, and then it turns it into 2 -20 weaknesses, and then does 150 damage. Now, how good is this? In my opinion, honestly, you need a lot of traps in order to make this worth it. What I really don't like about this spell is it kind of wastes 2 traps, because not only does it clear a trap, it also hits. So it almost is better with off-school traps. It might be better on other schools even, if you're just trying to, like, you know, clear an excess trap for whatever reason you have it, and you want to weakness someone. It's interesting, don't get me wrong, but it's a little situational for ice, in my opinion. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong on. We got the new Evil Snowman. Now, in my opinion, this is one of the best spells that ice has gotten in this update. At face value, it actually doesn't look that crazy, right? Basically what it does 195 damage, nothing too crazy for ice. It clears 2 weaknesses first, and then for each weakness that you clear, it puts on a 25 ice trap and a 25 school-specific shield on you. Meaning if you're going against like a fire, it's gonna clear 2 weaknesses, put 2 fire shields on you, put 2 25 ice traps on you, and then it does 195 damage. So obviously, you know, if you clear 1 weakness, the damage will literally activate the trap, but if you clear 2, you have a trap left over, which I think could be insanity. So in my opinion, this is an amazing spell against people that double weakness using anything close, anything resembling, like, you know, Threefold Fever, Oni's Attrition, Grim Reader, Banshee. Like, you could bait a lot of weaknesses on you and use this and completely turn the game around. I really like the concept of this spell. It's good because it baits people to weakness ice, and ice is really good against weaknesses, and this shows. Wyvern is probably the one that changed the least for some reason. I don't know, they didn't want to show my boy Wyvern any love. I mean, it used to basically clear 1 blade for a trap, and now it clears up to 2 blades for 2 traps. And what's really nice is the traps are 45. This is way better than Oni's Naturalism in a lot of ways, because for 1 extra pip, you're also getting a ton of damage, and the trap itself is better. So instead of running this, it might actually be in your favor to run this. I will say this, with high pip conserve, this spell does have value, and honestly, you might want to stack this trap with this trap. You might have noticed there's a lot of traps, so stacking them might just be a really, really good idea for ice. Blighthound might be the worst spell that I've seen in a while, and it's fine. They can't all be winners. I'm not saying it's like garbage. It kind of just isn't great, in my opinion. Like, it can do a maximum of 900 damage, basically, but you need to have weaknesses on you. And it doesn't do anything to those weaknesses, which is why I guess I don't really like it. But honestly, that's why I love Snowman, right? So, I mean, honestly, because Snowman is so good against weaknesses, I don't really know when you would use this. I think this is, like, solely good when you have infections on you, when someone's trying to do a weakness gambit. Because, let's say they have 3 infections. It does 440 plus 450. It does a lot of damage. I'm not gonna say it's nothing. It's just, I feel like when you have weaknesses on you, you should turn them into something instead of just trying to, maybe it's a good finisher. I don't even think it's worth the deck space, but it might be good. I don't know. Y'all can decide. Y'all should try it out if you think it's good. Finally, Colossus. Probably one of the greatest spells Wizard 101 has ever seen, period. But ice, they got nice with this, and I'm a big fan of this spell. I think a lot of people are rightfully crazily afraid of the 65 trap, and honestly, I think in a lot of ways, I'm like astonished that they added a 65 trap just for ice into this game. This is the strongest trap in the game other than Feint, and it comes with, in my opinion, fewer trade-offs. So what this spell does, right? It is a little risky, right? It clears up to 3 shields on you, and it replaces each with a 65 trap, and then it hits with a 585 damage hit. Now, this basically means that you can counter it 2 ways. You either need to counter the trap that it leaves, because they're very powerful traps, or you have to counter the shield before you can even clear them and make them into traps. You do leave yourself open when you do a move like this, so obviously you have to be very, very careful, and there are ways to turn traps against you, right? There's Locust Swarm, there's Oni's Naturalism, which basically turns traps into blades. For life, those are blades that they can literally use, and for Storm and Death, who knows? There might be a meta where they actually use their blade gambits with those blades. So it is a little scary in my opinion, but honestly, the fact that that 65 trap applies onto that 500 damage is what makes this nuts. So let's say that I had a tower shield on, right? And I had like maybe a brace on, just so that I have some defense left over, right? I could turn that tower into a 65 trap and just hit with the 585 hit and still have a brace left over to defend myself. It is harder to pull off than you'd think. Definitely you have to be careful about spamming this. I've seen people mess up trying to spam this, but honestly, this is probably the most offensive spell that Ice has ever gotten, and it's really up to par with a lot of the other 6-pip spells that we've seen. For that reason alone, I really like this. I think it can really, really do like quite a bit of tempo shifting for Ice, and it kind of needs it, because otherwise Ice games are just really slow. And I think something of this nature, maybe even with the lower trap, might work. I love the idea of clearing shields into traps. I just don't know, without testing it more, whether a 65 trap is like crazy or not. It does seem pretty crazy. Now, what's fun about the Ice update is that they actually did not really change the Rochambeaus all that much. So if you've been using them on Ice or another school, they're nothing really crazily different. Jin's Vexation turns weaknesses on you to weaknesses on your opponent. Glacial does weaknesses on you to shields on yourself. Wall of Blades turns blades into shields on yourself. It does not seem to be chromatic, to my knowledge. It seems to be 25 universal shield. And Oni's Destruction still turns blades into ice traps. So nothing has really changed on here, but they did change the other Rochambeau spells a little bit. They made all of the double damage spells just a little bit more powerful, and honestly, with the damage that you get, right? You get like 157 damage in this meta. It is not a, it's kind of wild. Everwinter Oni, which is the trap-based gambit, which I believe is probably the most, like, relevant because of all the, like, Snowman gives traps, Wyvern gives traps, Colossus gives traps. This one used to do 555 damage, and now it does 650 damage, meaning you have a 1300 damage base hit if you can get 4 traps on your opponent. Now, obviously, it's pretty damn hard to set up traps, especially when you don't have spells on your school that give 3 traps naturally. So, I don't know how useful this is. Like, I feel like Fire and Myth can definitely use their trap gambits easily because, you know, Myth has a Maple Moose, so they can literally easily go for that Maple Moose setup. And there's also Fuel, there's S'mores, there's Scarab, there's all kinds of things like that on a Fire. There might be a reason to run Arch Mastery and run, you know, a Scarab maybe, run Betrayal like I'm doing right now. We'll see if that's worth it in order to set this up, because it would be really, really cool to just set up some 65 traps, cover them with, you know, 3 traps, and then do an insane Everwinter Oni. It's definitely a possibility that this could be meta. But yeah, 650 damage instead of 555. It looks like they are viewing the trap gambits as harder to set up, which is why they're raising it, or maybe they're just raising it because that's just how they're standardizing things, damage per pip wise. Jin got a gigantic buff in my opinion. This is literally better than what Myth Jin used to be. And again, I think 4 weaknesses, it's not the easiest thing to set up, especially with the Delusion buff. This spell now turns weaknesses into chromatic traps, meaning if I use this, I'm getting ice traps out of this. So this spell is kind of risky unless you actually have a way to turn the traps that are on you or anything else that your opponent does into something better, but it could also be really worth it. I mean, it does like 1700 damage. Again, with the damage the way that it is and the pierce the way that it is, if you're doing this even with 1 buff, it's completely game ending for the opponent. And finally, Scion also got a big buff. It does over 2000 damage now. I could be mistaken, but I don't believe that it broke the 2000 barrier, and if it did, it was not by a lot. I believe it did 930 damage, just like PvE Scion. So now this is a lot better. Again, it's risky because of Betrayal. Now, Betrayal turns shields into chromatic traps. I don't know if they took that context into mind, making the ice spell so much better. I really don't know, but it makes sense to me. I think these are much harder to set up. Honestly, Scion is probably the hardest. Yes, you can spam tri-shields, but now they come with a lot more problems. You know, like Betrayal could be an issue. Myth has a huge new move with Minotaur, not to mention spells like Earthquake, spells like Elephant for fire. I mean, there's all kinds of ways you can still counter these. I still think it's a little easy to set up shield gambits for this to be that much more powerful, but it is something that Ice has. It's still an 11 pip spell, so I guess it's not broken, but we'll see. This one actually might be a dark horse of a spell, in my opinion. It could be really, really good. As far as shadow spells go, this is the last part of this update. This was also very, very minimal. They did do something that they seem to be doing across the board. They actually removed the 6 and 7 pip versions of Shatterhorn. Considering that 5 pip Shatterhorn is just Abominable Weaver, Shatterhorn is now no longer useful unless you're playing with minions, and minions have been removed. I'm gonna be honest, I think that's hella dumb. And obviously, I guess it's out of their control whether they can add dumb things or not with the whole minion audit coming. But I really think they should have turned the taunt into something else, because this is purely a useless spell unless you're trying to hit hard in PvE. Notably, Freeze Ray got changed into a weird AoE. Again, you can't do the higher version for PvP, which honestly no one was, but I guess. Now, you can turn it into a 6 pip AoE that also mantles, I believe. It does like an accuracy debuff, which kind of goes with the whole ice and weaknesses thing a little bit. Again, I feel like this is a little bit of an ass pull. This would have been cool to have the taunt on, and it would have been cool to have the Shatterhorn into something that wasn't a taunt. I have some crazy videos coming with the combos I'm pulling off with these traps, y'all. So I hope you guys are ready for those. Drop a like if you enjoyed. Leave us up if you're new. There are still life audits to cover, so make sure you turn on noties to check those out. But yes, this is clearly the one that people are going crazy about. So I want to explain what it did and get y'all's opinion on it. What do you guys think of this spell? What do you guys think of all the ice spells? As always, let me know your comments in the comment. Let me know your opinions in the comments below. Drop a like if you enjoyed. If somebody hasn't told you you're awesome today, they doing something wrong. So stay awesome. And yeah.